3, 2, Kaylee, all you.
Okay. Imagine living your entire life in this small, tiny little box. Never being able to roam free, never being able to find food for yourself, never being able to find a mate. Imagine your only view of the world is through these iron bars, through looking at people ogling at you, laughing, having fun, and being free. This is the sad reality for zoos and their animals in the world today. Habitats are the main thing that are wrong with zoos. They do not accommodate for the animal's natural habitat. My example, this San Diego Zoo, their elephant exhibit is made entirely of concrete and metal. And compared to elephants in the wild, they are free, they're grassy plains, trees, and shrubs. If you've ever been to a zoo, you've experienced stress-related behavior in animals. Many of these are self-explanatory, but I will explain the ones that don't really make sense. Pacing, bar biting, and tongue playing, that's when an animal goes up to the edge of the cage and either licks the plexiglass or bites the bars and attempt to escape. Neck twisting, head movements, rocking, self-mutilation, and that is when it's typically in cats and different animals that groom themselves. They take chunks of fur and rip it out of their skin in an attempt to try and get frustration out. And vomiting. And the vomiting is caused by anxiety and nerves about being in the zoo. Zoos often sponsor the suffering of animals by starving them. And these can vary on a case-to-case basis. Typically, it's because the portions for the animal are too small for them to live, or they are fed at specific times and the animal is not willing or able to eat at those times. Another zoo-sponsored suffering is selling the animals to different auctions, testing facilities, and circuses. This was a bear in the Toledo Zoo in Ohio. She is bred and trained by her instinct to go into hibernation. These zookeepers did not take into account that she needed to go into hibernation for the winter. They gave her her normal daily ration of grain, and they put her in her outside cage where everyone can see her. She then started to hibernate, and within a week, she was dead because of malnutrition due to the zookeepers not giving her enough food for hibernation. These are lemurs that came from a non-specific zoo because this is obviously very embarrassing, and they were being sold as food for big cats, wolves, dogs, other animals in that nature. This was a monkey that was in a zoo, and he was sold to a testing facility where they tested makeup and medicine on him. And he was trapped with this bar around his neck and in a cage no bigger than his body. This was a tiger that was sold from a zoo to a circus, and it really shows in this picture how big these deals are because there are security guards back behind the tiger because these tigers can net over $50,000 for the zoo, selling it into the circus. At zoos, animals are often prematurely dying or they get improper medical treatment. They die because they get diseases that aren't properly treated and inbreeding. And inbreeding is a huge problem in zoos because most zoos can't afford outside sperm or eggs. So mothers and sons daughters and fathers and sisters and brothers have to breed together to make more animals for the zoo. And the diseases are spread rapidly through species at a zoo because they share the same food, the same water, and the same environment constantly. And zoos often lack the proper medical attention and facilities that most of the animals need. This is exemplified in a zoo in South Wales. This was a giraffe who was the product of incest, and he had an infection, and instead of treating the giraffe with antibiotics or surgery, the zoo put him down. And to further this, they put him on display for $50 a head, and they dissect him in front of an audience. Zoos often slaughter animals that they don't need anymore, that they consider useless, and they are fed to other animals when feed stock runs low. They are killed because there are too many animals in the zoo, either in an exhibit or as a whole in the zoo. And those are all fed to bigger animals to keep the bigger, higher ticket animals alive. Also, they are slaughtered because of human encounters. If you remember this past summer about Harambe the gorilla, who was in the Cincinnati Zoo, he got shot because a little child roamed into his pen. And this is wrong because he was acting on his instincts to protect this child from the onlookers and the zookeepers. This is an example of the zoos feeding the lions other non-threatening animals. This, in case, is a giraffe. And if you've ever seen the Cove, I'm sure you recognize Tahiti Cove. This is where SeaWorld and other marine parks get their dolphins. They go in with specific standards for these fishermen, and if the standards aren't met with all of the dolphins, the rest of the dolphins that don't meet the standards are slaughtered and sold as tuna and other fish that you could be eating right now. And a point of rebut would be that zoos help with conservation. And this couldn't be far from the truth. Zoos work on a rehabilitate and release strategy for their animals. And this doesn't work because the animals are trained to be in captivity. And they are trained to have humans hunt for them, have them shelter, provide them a mate. And when they're put out into the wild, they can't survive because the humans don't provide them their needs for life. Breeding also causes this problem because they are raised into captivity. And when they're raised into captivity and released, over 75% of the animals that are released die within the first 6 months. And you can't help but think this whole conservation effort by the zoos are a big cover-up for their sponsors. As you can see here, Pepsi and Coca-Cola account for over 50% of the world's zoo sponsorships. Pepsi and Coca-Cola both use palm oil in their recipes. These kernels over here are the main staple in an orangutan's diet. And when these are all wiped out in an area, all the orangutans die. And Mattel and Walmart also cause deforestation because they need paper and cardboard and all these other paper products and plastic products for their industry to make a profit. Another point of a rebut is education. People say that zoos provide education, but in a US government study, over 68% of people never learn anything from the zoo. They go there, they look at the animals, they leave. And most information that is learned by the other 32% of people are learned from these placards. And These placards can contain incorrect information, and I think we all know how kids are. Kids can be told anything and they will believe it. And them being told that these animals enjoy being in the zoo when they're actually suffering can really be detrimental to the child's psyche. And as I said, these placards can contain incorrect information about the animal. It says here that they are often killed for their horns, but the biggest threat to black rhinos today is deforestation and loss of habitat. And it says where the range is, right here, in an updated map, that is from the 1700s, and this is from today. The rhinos haven't been in Central Africa since the 1700s, and they're down in the tip more than they are on the East Coast. So I implore you to really think about what you're doing for your family's entertainment. To really think, is this what you want to see? Imagine if the roles were reversed. If you were the one in the zoo and the animals were looking at you. And imagine how embarrassed, how you feel. How do you feel being presented in this way?
I feel very stared at right now. Vulnerable. I don't like it.
And with an animal, she would retaliate and act out if she so felt, if she was an animal. And that's what I think shouldn't be happening at zoos. And I think we need to change this by not going or supporting these zoos. Thank you.
I got a question.